1903 was a major turning point in Panama's history. Panama became an independent nation known as the Republic of Panama when they took their government out of Colombia. The U.S. played an important role in the revolution to help Panama get to this point so they can construct the Panama Canal and the Isthmus.
This nationalistic movement was started by the U.S. in rebellion to Colombia. They wouldn't let the United States build the Panama Canal because they felt it would prevent their sovereignty. The U.S. decided not to back down, and they provided Colombia with a treaty. When Colombia didn't agree to the treaty, Panama and the U.S. started a revolution. Later on, in 1914, the Panama Canal was completed. With this, Panama would now get about $10 million in revenues from the United States, just so they could send their ships through an easier and faster route and save the 7,800-mile trip.
The only supporters of the movement were the Panamanians and the Americans. The United States provided military support as well as financial support for the construction in this surprise Latin America. Although Latin America was not in full support of this movement, they were not against it either. In this case, there were not very many outside influences to change the views of the people. The nationalists were happy when the United States stepped in and started the revolution because they did not like how Colombia ruled them. They were mad when the Colombian leaders did not let the U.S. build the canal to use in exchange for $10 million.
The person who did a lot of the work to make sure everything worked out was Theodore Roosevelt, the President of the United States at the time. Many people thought his support was due to selfish reasons. They had the idea that he wanted to help Panama just so he could send the military ships through it. They did not feel he wanted to actually help the nationalists become independent.
Starting in 1899 was the Thousand Day War. It was a civil war between the liberals and the conservatives, and it did not end until 1902. This made Colombia weaker as a whole because people were not working together, which was a positive for Panama. This made it easier for Panama and the United States to get what they wanted. That is why Panama successfully became an independent nation a year later.
Later on in 1914, the Panama Canal was completed. With this being accomplished, Panama would now get more than $10 million in revenues from the United States, just so they could send their ships through an easier and faster route and save the 7,800-mile trip around South America. Since the main purpose of the canal was for military use, the construction of the canal made transportation quicker and cheaper for the U.S., making them a stronger nation and ally of Panama. To assure that Panama would get the full benefits they were promised by the United States, the Ay-Buná Treaty was created. This made the construction of the canal in 1903 established as well as the grand opening of it in 1914. It was named after Philippe Jean Bonneveria, the French diplomat in Panama, and the John Hay, the U.S. Secretary of State. They were the ones that wanted to make sure the treaty was signed and put into action. This was important to complete because Panama had been an independent nation before, but then they went in under the rule of Colombia in the mid-1800s.
In order to get to their point of freedom in the 1900s, the United States provided a lot of money as well as strong leaders to support Panama. Another important way that the U.S. helped Panama was the construction of the Panama Railroad. The U.S. had recently constructed one in the States, and it was successful, so the idea carried into Panama. Doing so, they combined different sections of the isthmus. The railroad was constructed in 1885, and it runs parallel to the canal as another way of fast communication and transportation. It is also much easier for Panama to sell their goods on the trains than it is for them to send small cargo ships throughout the isthmus. This was a big step of technology for Panama, and it also helped boost their economy, making it easier for when they become independent.
This movement was not the only movement of nationalism in Panama. In 1977, the nationalists in Panama noticed that the United States was trying to take leadership around the Panama Canal, and they wanted that to stop. To complete this task, they came up with the Torrijos-Carter Treaty. It was created because in 1964, the United States had their flag flying in the canal zone, and Panama wanted to do the same because it was on their land. The U.S. was not sure about this, and so there was tension between the two nations. Along with this, there were also political issues going on in Panama, so it was important to resolve these tensions. A little over 10 years later, everything was settled in both countries and the treaty was signed.
It took a long time for nationalists in Panama to get what they wanted, starting with the idea of the canal and the hostile government in Colombia. Although this was a nationalistic movement, it took a lot of support from the United States to help carry out the ideas and demands of the Panamanians. It started in the mid-1800s when Panama went under control of the Colombian government and the U.S. helped build the Panama Railroad. It wasn't until 1899 through 1903 when a lot of progress was made to make Panama independent again. The movement finally ended in 1977 with the Torrijos-Carter Treaty. All of this was an important time in Panama's history because they were able to become their own country, they formed a strong economy, and they got the United States as a strong ally.